In this programme, we look at two inner London authorities where personalisation has led to a radical rethink of what social care provision can be.
We simply didn't have enough resources to do our job. So what do? Do we stop doing our job, or do we try to find other ways of doing it?
We tore up the commissioning role, we tore up the kind of provider role.
We were dealing with a blank sheet of paper, and in a way that was the most exciting thing.
In the heart of London lies Camden, where great affluence coexists with great poverty. Here, the local authority has begun to embrace personalisation across the board, not least in its provision for one group of people relatively high in number in the borough.
We recognise that our day centres for younger adults with mental health problems were being commissioned in a rather old-fashioned way, with how many people would go through the door and how many types of activity they do and so on.
When the time came to put the contracts for Camden's 3 mental health day services out to tender, the authority took the chance to reformulate their commissioning process.
We used to say, we want you to be able to deliver this number of places for this number of people. How much is it going to cost? And we just turned that completely around to be person-centred and say, we want these outcomes. What's your offer? How are you going to meet them?
For one local provider who already operated one of the day services, the council's request inspired a re-evaluation of how they supported people.
Traditionally, we work with excluded groups of people in excluding ways. We take people out of society and we try to fix them, and then when we think we've sort of fixed them, we return them back. We thought about that a lot and sort of decided that actually as a process that didn't really work for us.
Having already begun to incorporate elements of co-production, in response to the personalised tender, Holy Cross Centre Trust boosted levels of user involvement using a volunteer time exchange.
Time banking is where people from all over the community come together. It includes service users, general public, staff, and essentially 1 hour of somebody's time equals 1 time credit. It's as simple as that.
Now at Holy Cross, activities from computer classes to a women's group are led by service users. In return for contributing time to help others in this way, people get time bank credits, which many spend on training, leading to qualifications which in turn enable them to play an even greater role in the centre's operation.
At Holy Cross Centre Trust, we don't just see people as service users, volunteers or staff, we try and see just people. Ahmed has gone from sort of strength to strength, really. Been working in the kitchen with us.
I am from Iraq. Because I am asylum seeker in the first time and don't allow to take any job and to do anything until my case is become clear. My time banking, I always use it, take some courses in food hygiene, in mental health, and I am now in advice and guidance in level 3.
Ian's been coming to the centre for just over a year. Over a period of time, Ian's got much more involved.
This mad monarch was returned to the throne with the heart of help from Richard Neville and the hair of Warwick, the Kingmaker.
Oh, Christians, aren't they? Very young.
He organises a quiz night, and now he runs twice a week his own support group.
How's the men's group going?
Lots of men.
Yeah? Can I ask what you talk about, or am I not allowed to? I'll disguise myself one day. Infiltrate the men's group.
Holy Cross Centre Trust really treats people as resources in their own right, as citizens with something to give back, not just as passive recipients of the services that we choose to give them.
Despite winning favour for their outcome-focused approach, the tendering process posed a problem for Holy Cross, since Camden now wanted a single organisation to run all 3 of its day services.
At the time, we're a small provider, and logistics of taking over a large contract would have been actually quite problematic for us.
Sam and his colleagues tried to get around this by teaming up with 2 larger organisations, Mind Camden and the Volunteer Bureau.
We got into all sorts of interesting discussions with our finance colleagues about whether we could have a consortium which included organisations which were technically too small to take on a contract of this size. In the end, we got to an agreement whereby if you had one organisation which was sufficiently robust, they could be the lead provider, and the others were allowed to be part of the contract. And that really helped with the small provider issue because they couldn't have competed by themselves. So we were quite pleased to have found a way around that quite, the procurement rules, which appeared quite rigid.
The consortium was successful in winning the contract, but Sam remains acutely aware of the hurdles facing small providers in getting commissions from local authorities.
We probably at the moment are providing about £40,000 or £50,000 worth of business a year to Camden, so we need to raise our indemnity insurance to £10 million, and that actually costs us £9,000 annually, which is heading towards a sort of 20% of the income that we're receiving from that pot of money, which again causes us all sorts of problems as a small provider.
To help small providers over these hurdles, Holy Cross decided to extend the time banking concept from people trading hours to organisations trading resources.
The sector's not very good at sharing stuff. We've got a standard gag really, we've got a very special table tennis table. Why is it special? It's because you've got to have mental health problems to use it. Old people have got theirs, young people have got theirs, Bengalis have got theirs. And actually there's much more fun to be had in sharing table tennis tables. What we needed to do was find a mechanism of opening up resources, and we settled on something called Camden Shares. Camden Shares is a way in which organisations can trade resources through a time exchange.
Camden Shares now unites over 70 organisations. Commissioners are hopeful that by tapping into it, in the future they'll be able to give small providers greater access to commissions.
We're working with Holy Cross Centre and NAPS on how we can get a system that supports these micro-enterprises to be good, efficient organisations that we can trust and that our service users can trust, but without drowning them in bureaucratic red tape.
A few miles east from Camden, mental health residential care has undergone a similar reappraisal. A conversation between Tower Hamlets Council and an existing block provider called Look Ahead kick-started an attempt to extend the principles of personalisation to a residential scenario.
We wanted to be able to do things in that particular type of care setting that perhaps hadn't been done anywhere else. But we wanted to ensure that the provider remained stable. So that meant how did we need to think about the way that we invested in them.
What was developed was a core and flexi model in which about 2/3 of the money originally spent on Look Ahead's block contract still goes centrally to Look Ahead in the conventional way, but the remaining amount is diverted to the people using Look Ahead services, partly as a credit to use a certain amount of support worker time in any way they wish, and partly as a weekly cash allowance.
This isn't a personal budget in the conventional social care sense, where people have gone through self-assessment and RAS and so on. This is Look Ahead choosing to use its block contract money differently.
Hi, my name's Dwayne. Coming.
Dwayne, who has a hearing impairment, has been living in Look Ahead's rehabilitation house for a few months.
I was ill, paranoid, stressed, worried, I was hearing voices, I was shaking bad. When I learned about football, I was really interested. Seeing that I play with them, come every week, and then Mr. Chen will come every week.
Dwayne has used part of his £30 weekly allowance to finance his football passion.
This is my room. All my boots. This is my favourite. This is Tower Hamlet Tigers. P-mainly positive mental attitude. I've been playing with them for 3 years now. In first season, Division 1, they won the league.
Some of the requests around support weren't always straightforward in terms of, is this a social care activity? Is this something we support? Is it something we can support? And we had to go through a kind of learning and, I guess, development of ourselves in terms of moving away from our resources just supporting outputs to actually our resources supporting outcomes for people. Outcomes that perhaps seem intangible, but they're outcomes around well-being, their outcomes around confidence, their outcomes around self-esteem. All these things make your mental health better.
The second flexi element of the model is that each customer gets a number of hours of flexible support time to use as they wish.
A lot of people come here and have never had to cook for themselves before. So it's pretty much starting right from the basics, how to know when things are cooked, different types of dishes. Is that good?
Hot.
Customers get help in making their choice of support worker through prominently displayed profiles of all staff members, including manager David.
Most of the customers have used my aspirations as an icebreaker. They come to the office to pick on me because I said I would love to do bungee jumping and tap dancing. And Dwayne, for instance, he used to do ballet and he's good at tap dancing. So he was saying he could show me some few steps. So for instance, that was like a really good opportunity for me to like really engage with Dwayne.
Rather than maybe more conventionally, a support worker will come along with their diary and fit somebody in. It's really about the individual needs and preferences of the individual. That's not always easy for a service that has to operate a rota, for example. It has to provide certain cover. So this isn't really an easy option, but the impact it has on people's choice and control is so huge that I think once you try it, then you're never going to turn back.
One of the concerns that came up from the workforce was, would they actually get picked to support people? On the other hand, some of the staff were concerned that actually too many demands would be made on them, that they wouldn't be able to keep up with requests for support from individuals. But in reality, I think it's worked out very well.
Another customer utilising Look Ahead's new model is Stephen.
I've been diagnosed as having paranoid schizophrenia with traits of Asperger's syndrome. I have paranoid delusions, maybe thinking I'm the only person who exists and everyone else, like you, don't exist, which is very awkward. How can you relate to people when you don't think they exist in the first place?
Tonight, Stephen is using some of his flexi support time to be accompanied across East London to begin volunteering for a project close to his heart.
I'm going for training for this voluntary job to help the homeless. And I'm very excited. I've never done a voluntary job like this before. I was once homeless myself and I know how it feels to be homeless. I want to share my experience with these people, and so they've got hope when they look at me that one day they might be like me.
Some of you, you're totally new to what's going on and you may have had no or very little experience of working amongst the homeless.
For Stephen and Dwayne, personalisation isn't just about choosing what you want, it's about being who you are.
Because I guess we started with that blank sheet of paper, we went up lots of different false paths along the way until we eventually came to the model that worked for that particular service.
We've all learnt through going through this process. We've learnt what works well, we've learnt what's possible, and we've probably learnt what isn't possible. And the isn't possible is a very small list.
Across London, there's agreement that the ultimate purpose of personalised commissioning is to break down the traditional model of segregated existence.
We'd like to see a situation where people were no longer in service ghettos, finding much more holistic ways of supporting people within an environment surrounded by much more opportunity than they could ever be surrounded by in traditional day centre settings.
Over time, I think we'll see a much more blurred boundary between recipients of social care and ordinary citizens who are living their lives with a bit of help from the finances that we can provide for them.